Welcome to episode 6 of Bernie's Bums. Olivia, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about you?
Hey, I'm all right. Hey, sorry for the delay on the podcast this week. Mother's Day was upon us, so I hope you all called your mothers. It was my wife's first Mother's Day as being a mother, so shout out to you, Rachel, part of one of the people who allows me to keep doing this thing. So big thanks to her. And then just through the rest of this week, we were just all wound up and excited about these series that we wanted to compile it all together for you guys. So let's get into it. First and foremost, Brewers swept the Nats and they dropped 2 out of 3 to the Cubs and then bounced back and win the series against the Philadelphia Phillies by winning 3 games. What were your thoughts about this road trip so far? And they're heading into Atlanta. Um, how are you feeling with them heading into Atlanta right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. This is reminding me a lot of last year and just kind of the relentlessness of the team and how you drop a series and then we come right back up and we're scoring guys and we're producing runs. It just kind of reminds me of last year and how relentless we were with just coming back right away.
Yeah, no joke. I mean, it's insane how comparable the record is this year in comparison to where they were last year at this point too. So that's something that I want to bring up. Brewers fans who are saying that the Brewers, I remember after the Cubs series, you're hearing, oh, things are going down the tank. They just don't have it this year. Chill out. When it comes down to it, they are right there in the same spot when you were praising them last year too. So chill out and watch these guys rake, watch them pitch, watch them get this thing done. Anyway, sorry if I was someone that got mad or someone I was getting mad at there, but you need to check yourself. Anyway, um, the pitching's been absolutely incredible. Am I right?
It's been unbelievable. I think it just took a little bit to kind of get everybody settled in, everybody to realize what their roles were going to be to start off with. I think there's always kind of some confusion in the beginning of the year with that. But over how long has it been? Like the last week and a half, maybe? Like they've been ridiculously good and very, very impressive.
Right. I mean, I've been pleasantly surprised, and I know that people were really down on the pitching at the start of the year, which is fair because just blowing games left and right, giving up a ton of runs, and having making the offense have to scratch and claw to get ahead in games. Now you're seeing games where you know, your starters putting you in a position where they're either blanking teams or they're giving up 1 or 2 runs going into the fifth or sixth inning. You can't really top much of that. And a huge part of that has been Gio Gonzalez. What a huge signing for the Brewers. I was surprised that he didn't get picked up by anyone to be like a legit starter for them to begin with, but I'm glad that he was able to fall through the cracks and the Yankees decided to pass on him because I don't know, it's one like I said before, he's a good test run if the Brewers were to decide to go after Kimbrel. I know you and I have differing opinions on that, which is fine, but it is a good test run because you're seeing someone who was late into camp but yet is able to function and be successful. There's something that I know there's something about Gio Gonzalez in Milwaukee that really clicks though. So it's a case by case basis as you go along, but he has been absolutely outstanding for the Brewers.
Yeah, bouncing off of what you were saying, I think there is truly something with Milwaukee, and he just kind of gets it. He gets what his role is, and he gets that all he has to do is go out and get outs. He doesn't, there's no inning limit on him. It's not like Counts is saying to him before every start, like, go out and get 7 innings for me. All Counts is saying to him is go out and get outs. That's all I care about. And I think that's just carried on throughout the whole pitching staff and into the bullpen. They're just getting out.
Yeah, for sure. And what's really cool about Gio Gonzalez is just him as a person. Like he's super upbeat dude, and he's fun to watch out there. Like just with like a lot of these guys, they have a lot of personality. Matt Lepay was saying on air that like down the stretch he wasn't around because it was Brian Anderson announcing games, but he was just talking about how he's like, yeah, I didn't want to go up to him and talk to him because first game back, a lot of guys just want to go do their own thing. And he comes up, he's like, "Hi, I'm Gio. How's it going?" And it's just great to see like he's a great fit as far as personality goes, and I think that goes into how he really fits in Milwaukee with the group of guys that they have. Um, Going along with the pitching, Chase Anderson's back off the IL. What are your thoughts of him coming in? Is he going to make an impact right away?
I think he will. I think, at the beginning of this season for him, I think he was a bit disappointed in himself to start out in the bullpen. But ever since he's been starting, he's really been the Chase Anderson we've seen a couple of years ago, where, knock on wood, he's not giving up all those home runs within the first couple of innings, and he's making really, really good pitches. And his location has been fantastic. So I'm really excited to see him come back after a bit of a setback, but I'm excited to see him back in action.
Right, for sure. I mean, what we've seen this year is a guy who's about his business. He just goes out there and gets it done, and he ain't letting that. He ain't let if he's gonna let that starting pitching slot go, which I don't think he will. It ain't gonna come easily. Um, he's a he's been an absolute competitor since he's gotten in this year, and I don't see that really changing. He he's a this is I want to get your take on this too. He is a major case for the NL adopting a DH, and that's the same thing you could say for Jimmy Nelson as well. What are your thoughts on the NL? It's a little off topic of what we were talking about, but would you welcome a DH in the NL?
I would 100% welcome that opportunity. Yeah, I do enjoy the strategy of the double switches, and I do enjoy Brandon Woodruff hitting homers off of Kershaw. I enjoy all of that, but at the same time, you've had a lot of injuries come around the bases from Jimmy Nelson and Junior Guerra a couple years ago on opening day. I think it, and not even that, just I think I don't know what podcast I was listening to, but they were talking about how when you get to the World Series, you want both teams to be on even playing field, and one team for how many games is going to be kind of out of the blue with it because they don't know how to work with a DH, or they don't know how to work with their pitchers hitting. So I think to kind of get an even ground all around, I think it's a necessary adjustment they need to make.
Yeah, for sure. I was very against it for a while. It's almost just kind of a don't touch my game type thing. But yeah, you look at the Brewers roster right now. Three out of their however many pitchers. It's hard to keep track as guys get DFA'd or goes up or down. Um, Three out of their pitchers, like you said, have had injuries that have sidelined them for seasons. Jimmy Nelson still hasn't. I mean, Jimmy Nelson still hasn't been around, and that's really hard to see. And like you look at Junior Guerra, he was gone for a year. Chase Anderson gone for a year. Like that's really tough stuff, especially when you're putting stock in these guys to be your number one at the time. Chase Anderson was your number one at the time. Junior Guerra was at the time when he got hurt. Jimmy Nelson was becoming an absolute world beater, and then he gets hurt. It's really tough to see. I mean, luckily the Brewers have been able to retool, reload, and these guys are now starting to come back, obviously in different roles. Um, but when it comes down to it, it also gives other guys jobs too. Um, you then see a guy like, whether you're on a fan of Eric Thames or not, you see a guy like him able to just do probably the only job that he should be doing is being a DH. You look at guys like Jesus Aguilar, you're able to rotate that first base position. That's what a lot of those teams in the AL do. Now you're starting to see that in Los Angeles now that Shohei Otani's back. Like he ain't gonna play the field, he's DHing. Now you have guys that can do that rotation at first base. There's just a lot of things you can do, and it's able to employ more people, which in the end, I think is a cool thing. Anytime you can get more jobs to people.
And I think
Um, Go ahead.
and I think too it's just easier as guys get older. I mean, I was listening to the same podcast as they were talking about this, and I think for a little while the NL was so scared to sign those big, long contracts because once
Mm-hmm.
your legs start to lose, like you can't stick them anywhere if they're an outfielder. So I think of guys like Ryan Braun, who
Absolutely.
his legs aren't going to carry him like they did when he was 25 years old and thriving. So I think I look at guys like him, and that'd be a perfect spot for him where he doesn't have to play in the field and worrying about sliding all the time, where he just has one pure role and he could focus on that.
And that's a great segue to the next point because my guy Ryan Braun is absolutely lighting the world on fire right now. And we
Wow,
talked
that's
we talked about last week about him getting to double digit home runs, and he sure did that. You look at it, his stats in Philly. I want to know what they ended up as, but I know during the middle of the series they were mentioning him for a career. He's hitting around 430 in in Philly. That's incredible. Like for anyone to do that anywhere, let alone a place that he visits, a relatively decent amount throughout his career. He's hitting 430 on a career, and it has to be over. I mean, he had to have hit over 500 um, over this series, if I'm not mistaken, because he was just tearing the cover off the ball.
yeah. I think this Philly series almost came at a perfect time for him because I think he was starting to get it back, and then being able to come to a park where he's done very well at for whatever reason that may be. I think that'll help him carry out through the rest of the season to know that, hey, like I can still hit the ball a little bit and I can still drive it to all sides of the field. I think this was kind of an important series for him to figure that out.
Right? I was wrong on the home runs. He has 9. I thought he hit one today. I was mistaken on that. But when it comes down to it, I know again you're not an average person, but he went from hitting under 200 2 weeks ago to now being at 277. Like, regardless of your take on it, I think that's still pretty impressive. Like, he's hitting the ball, he's making great contact, and he's being able to put the ball through different shifts that were starting to put on it. They were starting to put on him. Um, when we talk about the DH situation, say the NL doesn't go to it, if he has a resurgence like this where he's able to um, hit like this, even if he's a 270 hitter, there's a shot for him to continue his career after the Brewers, which, I hope that he's a guy that I hope retires a Brewer, but you never know. And like, it's still great to see him starting to rip the ball again going forward. It's definitely a big help for the Brewers. Um,
Yeah, and
Another guy who's sorry, go ahead.
no, just to bounce off that real quick, I think it Counts always talks with Andy Haynes. They started discussing like a circular lineup this year where there's really no gap in the lineup. Like all of your 9 hitters are going to give you a good at bat. And I think with him being in this third spot like he was today, and to be able to be hitting like he was, it gives Christian Yelich a better chance to hit the ball even more because they're not going to want to pitch around Yelich just to get Braun, who's probably even hotter right now. So I think it helps kind of even out the lineup where you're giving Yelich more chances to get hits because there's a threat right next to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said with the circular lineup, that's one thing that's really cool. Like it's there's that idea in basketball of the positionless basketball. You see in football, you're starting to get guys who are taking handoffs, catching passes, and even sometimes throwing the ball. Um, Now you're seeing that in baseball, especially with the Brewers, guys that are starting to play everywhere, like guys that are going to be able to play all over. And it doesn't matter where you are in the lineup, you're just going to hit. And that's one thing that's great, I think, for younger, like for kids, because they're able to see different guys hitting different, like Mike Moustakis, like he's bounced around between what 3 and 7 this year. Didn't he even? I think he hit 2 at one point too. You're seeing a guy who's sticking the ball, who's hitting 7 for you at times. So a kid, I know, at least growing up, you're like, oh, I want to be a 3 or 4 hitter, or I want to lead off. It doesn't matter anymore. It's just go out there and hit the ball. And like, I think that's a really good lesson for kids that are coming up, where it's like it doesn't matter where you're hitting, just go hit. Like that's all that matters when it comes down to it. And the Brewers do a really good job of that because top to bottom, you're going to get a guy who's going to put together an at bat that is going to benefit the Brewers, a whether it's a productive out for the most part, or they're hitting the ball. The only time they're not doing that is when bases are loaded, and that's been a real problem for them. So, um, leaving runners on base, the Brewers have left 15 per game. They're leaving 15 runners on base, and that's the fifth most in the league. I think there's two takes you can have on this. I want to know what yours is.
Well, you're right. There is two takes. You can look at it from the fact of, everybody's hitting in the lineup, but then you look at situational hitting and you assume that it's not that great because you're leaving
Hmm.
so many guys on base. But I
Right.
think right now at the moment, I mean, it cost us to win on Monday, which I don't really want to talk about Monday. I was very disappointed in that play, but we'll
I
move
would like
on.
to talk about one thing about Monday, but keep going.
I know what you're going to touch on. We'll get there later, but I think right now, I think we're fine because like today you saw we're still hitting with guys in scoring position. It's just not the bases loaded. It's just when a guy's on third or a guy's on second. So right now, I mean, we're scoring a decent amount of runs, I think, but for sure later in the season when you're gonna need those games to kind of be broken out, and you do get that chance with the bases loaded and no outs, you gotta pull through.
Right. And that's the thing. You look at today, they had double digit. They had double digit. They left double digit runners on base, and they won. They scored 11 runs, and they had 3 errors. There is no team on earth that deserves to win a game if they have 3 errors and leave double digit runners on base. But the Brewers find a way to get it done. It's just crazy to think, but um, yeah, I mean, when like you said, everyone's hitting the ball. So when everyone's hitting the ball, people are still like, there's still you get out at some point, and obviously you prefer them not to get out with runners on base, but they are hitting in situations. So this is one of the only times that I've been like, I'm not super concerned with that. So I'm really interested, hopefully, that they can, um, at least with bases loaded, start driving runs in because no matter what, that's always going to drive me crazy. Another thing that drives me crazy was David Ross on Monday. I love David Ross. I don't care if he was a Cub. However, David Ross was talking about how, specifically JT Real Muto, the way that he catches. There were things that I took from it that I really enjoyed. Like I like just the way he analyzed the way Real Muto, um, the way that he frames pitches. So he brings the ball, he'll catch it and bring it into his body. And one thing that's really impressive about what he was doing is getting that thumb under the ball is probably the top three hardest things to do as a catcher. Getting like on that low pitch, getting that thumb under it instead of turning your glove or having to drop down and block. So he's able to do that and bring the ball closer to his body so it looks like strikes. And that's the name of the game now is stealing strikes. We see it with Yasmani Grandal where he tries to cheat corners at times and get that ball, pull it in to try to get that strike. The thing is now what you're seeing, he emphasized it with Real Muto, is how he will lay that leg down on the ground or he will just like completely flex one direction or another. That works if that ball is going to be in that general area. You are not going to be able to get out and kick and block. Now, it's almost like hitting. The strikeout is now not viewed as anything that's that bad. Same thing with catching. Now blocking isn't viewed as it almost doesn't seem like it's viewed as an essential skill. David Ross made a point during the game where he said, if there's a runner on base, sometimes you're just going to try to steal the strike and you might miss it every once in a while. I'm not down with that. Like you need to catch the ball. You need to catch the ball, and that's something that I was focusing on Real Muto there, but that's something that we've been seeing time in and time out with Yasmani Grandal, where he's getting too. There's too much of that. I'm gonna put it politely, that finesse around the plate, where he's trying to stay in there so long to try to get that pitch and steal a strike. And I get it. The idea is that you're trying to steal so many strikes throughout a game that it's going to lessen the amount of runs that are brought in. However, when it comes down to it, I have a problem just allowing guys to get bases on me. And maybe that's a pride thing being a former catcher, but that's something that I really hate to see. I can't imagine sitting there being like, all right, I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm going to try to keep this one right here. And if it tips off my glove, I better get up and just try to go get there. I don't know. Like I talked about a little bit last week, the catcher position is a different thing than what I'm used to, and I think the pendulum will swing back to keeping that ball in front of keeping that ball in front of me and making sure that guys aren't advancing on me. I don't think that those two are mutually exclusive though. I think you can still be a great framer while being a great blocker. I don't know. That's my rant, but I disagreed with about 80% of what David Ross was saying on the broadcast the other day.
Just to touch on that a little bit, first of all, where did you hear that strikeouts aren't viewed as bad? Because I hate strikeouts. Second of all, I think the biggest thing is, yeah, I mean, you want to frame the pitch or whatever, and I'm not the biggest fan of framing pitches. Sure, you might get a few, but I don't think you can get that much. Just my opinion, but I think it's bothersome because on Monday we saw that the guy swung and missed on a third strike, and he's still picking at the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you he already swung and missed. You don't need to make it look good. The ball bounced, like the ball
I mean, yeah,
bounced. It's not
it's
gonna
not like
do
he's gonna
anything.
know like, okay, yep, this pitch he's gonna swing. Now I'm gonna decide to block, obviously, but you got to work. Like you got to work to block. You know that thing is gonna be in the dirt. You know that thing is not going to be. Like, I agree with you. Like you're not gonna pick it and make that thing a strike. It's just not going to happen. And when it comes down to it, it's like that's what like it's becoming weirdly enough, on the catching game, it's becoming a finesse game, and on the offensive side, it's becoming a power game. The reason I equated it to the strikeouts is ESPN even put out an article today, basically saying, talking about the death of the 300 hitter, about how that's not being emphasized anymore, where it's being, I better go out there and I'm gonna mash. Like if I can't put the ball out of the yard, I can't play. Which to a point in this kind of game, yeah, I don't disagree with it, but I don't see why you can't be hitting lasers around the field. There's a reason a guy like Jeff McNeil has a job. There's a reason Segura has a job. John Segura is a phenomenal contact hitter, and he's going to put one out here and there. You look at the one that he hit today, that's because he got every stitch of that ball. Even looking at Christian Yelich isn't a power hitter. Christian Yelich is a guy who is a hitter, and he happens to hit home runs, and a lot of them just because he hits the ball so hard. I don't know. It just I'm very frustrated like with the state of the game in those areas. Don't get me wrong, still love baseball, but those two areas really frustrate me on the analytic end of it because I'm going to take a guy who's just going to get on base for me 10 times out of 10 versus a guy who like Luke Voigt right now in Luke Voigt, Daniel Vogelbach, guys who are going to hit 220 for me and put 35 out of the yard. That guy's being valued now, and like that frustrates me.
Oh, it
If that's the
bothers me
case, then
too.
go bring back Chris Carter, and we'll go through those days again.
Let's not.
Right,
I prefer not.
right, all right. I I'm done being angry. Let's talk about how fun this team has been. Um, Christian Yelich now has 18 home runs. Since we were talking about that, that's thoroughly impressive. I him coming to Milwaukee, I would have never thought that this is going to be a guy that's going to be a long ball threat for you, let alone a guy who's going to be atop the league in home runs.
No, I never would have expected this. But it goes to what you were saying before, where he just happens to hit home runs because he hits the ball so hard. Like, I always love to see his reaction when somebody says the words launch angle to him because he hates it. He hates it. I think it's been misplaced in the game of baseball. I think there's a time and a place for launch angle, but the uppercut swing isn't going to solve that issue. That's a different topic for a different time. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's funny. I think it's funny when you talk about it, and his launch angle is one of the lowest in the games. But he hits the ball just so incredibly hard that it's gonna leave the ballpark. And I don't know. It's just been kind of something cool to watch because in a time of launch angle where everybody's talking about it, your MVP doesn't even have one. I just think it's kind of a funny coincidence that's happened.
Well, he does, but it's just low, and that's the thing. It's like, so I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, this is just some stupid thing put in the game, and I agree, it's dumb, and I don't think that it's there's. I shouldn't say it's dumb. I think different strokes for different folks. I think everyone's got their own way of hitting. When it comes down to it, I think the one that's tried and true is see the ball, hit the ball, and I'm not going to calculate where I think this thing might come and swing at his own. I'm going to go see the ball and I'm going to try to hit it. Now, not me personally, but however, someone who's a good hitter is going to go do that. Um, I I really struggle with it, and like I'm seeing it. Like, you see it so much younger now. You see kids that are like a buck 20 that are trying to lift the ball out of the park, and that's just not realistic. Like that takes so much more than just saying, "All right, we're going to change the way that you throw your hands at the ball, and you'll start getting the ball in the air, and they'll float out of here." No, teach them how to hit first, and if it's something that you think will really benefit them in the long run, and they're still going to be able to hit the ball and get on base, cool. Then do whatever you need to. But when it comes down to it, it is not. I don't think it's a sustainable kind of hitting. And maybe I'm wrong, and I'm going to sound like an idiot, but like I just don't see it as being something that's going to be sustainable over 5 to 10 years. But who knows? Anyway, let's talk out the Brewers. Let's get some predictions rolling. Yay or nay? Starting pitching stays under 2 runs per outing against Atlanta.
I'd say yay. At the rate that they've been going, I think at least, I mean, I think it's a decent bet at this point. I mean, you got guys who are really, really rolling at this point, so I think it's a decent bet that that happens.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say nay to it. I mean, everyone is pitching well in that starting rotation, pitching really well. So I'm going to go yay as well. For the same reasons. Yay or nay, Travis Shaw is optioned to AAA after coming off the IL.
I'm gonna go nay just because I think they're gonna keep him in quote unquote rehab starts for an extended period of time before he gets a little more comfortable. I think that's kind of been, I mean, obviously his wrist thing, that's worthy for him to go on the IL, but I think it's kind of the nice thing of the timing where he'll be able to get rehab starts and get comfortable and have just a couple days off to just breathe and not have to worry about anything and get his head right, because I think right now that's his biggest issue. But I think nay, just because I think they're going to give him extended rehab starts to kind of fill that in.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think they're going to give him as much time as they can being down there. I was actually reading about the whole situation with the IL, and it's hard to. There's so many different stipulations on how a guy can stay and go. So I don't know his exact situation on how they could run it. But yeah, I'm with you, and I agree that it's something that he needs to go down there to get something right, because he's talking about how he's watching film all the time, and he's like, I see what's wrong, but nothing feels right, and I feel like I correct something and something else is wrong. So I hope that there's a chance for him to be able to right the ship there, because he's valuable, and it's hard to whether he's valuable as a guy playing for the Brewers or he's valuable as a trade piece for something going forward. He's a valuable piece that um, needs to be maximizing the talent that he has. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm going to go nay. I don't think he's going to be optioned there per se, but it's going to be those starts like you were saying. Um, Next one, yay or nay? Keston Hira is the 3 hitter by mid-June.
That is a nay all the way. I think that's kind of, I don't know. I'm a little unsure whether he's up here to stay or whether he's up here to just get a taste of the big leagues. I think, in my opinion, there's always the right time for a prospect to be up full time. I think you saw that with Orlando Arcia, where he came in at a right time because his position was open. He was like, obviously Keston was doing really, really good in the minors, but the position was open. It was wide open for him, and they had time for him to kind of test the waters. for to say. But I think with here, there's a little bit of a different situation because you did sign Moose, and you do still have Travis Shaw that they've um, talked about how they want to get him back in the lineup and how when he's right, he's a very valuable part to the lineup. So I think I don't know if he'll necessarily stay up long enough to do that.
I originally was going to say yay. However, I will say nay because I think they're going to give him a chance to. They're just going to let him hit at whatever spot, and that goes along with the cyclical lineups, like you were saying. So he's going to be a guy that I don't think he goes back down this year personally. I think he's going to hit himself. I think he's going to get himself to a point where you can't send him down. He's going to be too valuable, and then they'll have to figure out. You got three guys that play second base, second sec. You have three guys that play the combination of second and third base. Obviously, that's a problem. Orlando Arcia, I don't know. The Brewers get crazy. I don't foresee any of those three guys being someone that's going to play short for you. But if Orlando Arcia doesn't hit the ball, it's usually the bat that plays. So I don't know. It's going to be tough because you're not going to put him anywhere in the outfield. Those guys. So I agree with you. There's a logjam there, and it may be a platoon situation. I could see them do a platoon situation with Shaw and Hira, but is that worth it in the end? And I think so if you can get Shaw right. But long story short, I'm saying nay to Keston Hira being the 3-hitter by mid-June. Yay or nay? The Brewers will have 5 or more All-Stars this year.
Honestly, I'm gonna very unpopular opinion, but I don't really care. Um, sure, there's a chance we have really, really good talent on our team, but in the end, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Sure, it's fun with the pageantry and the introductions and be able to represent your team with a bunch of players, but I would rather I don't know. I don't see sure the All-Star game is great, but I don't see it as something where we should count our money on it. Like I don't really care.
Yeah, and that's not what the question was meant for. It was more of just like, are you gonna have guys that are top end talent getting in? And I'm gonna say yay. I think you're gonna have. I think Moustakis will be a starting second baseman. For the NL, I think Grandal will get in. Granted, Molina is gonna be the starter just because that's how things work. Um, Hader will get in. Yelich will get in. I'm gonna make a bold prediction on 2, and I'm gonna say Zach Davies and Ryan Braun will get in
No
as well.
Lorenzo Kane?
No Lorenzo Kane this year. I
Oh,
hate to say it, but no Lorenzo Kane this year.
okay, if he's in, you're
Um,
not getting back on the train. I'm sorry,
no,
man.
I'm on the train. I love Lorenzo Kane, but I don't know. It would take a lot of doing for him to get there, that'd be obviously awesome if he did. So sure, we'll throw Lorenzo Kane in there too. But I feel like that would just be too many Brewers on the roster. Then again, the Cubs seem to have like the entire starting lineup one year too. So who knows? We'll see what happens. Next one. No errors will be committed the rest of the weekend by the Brewers. Yay or nay?
Um, I will go. I'm gonna go nay, just because it seems like we always kind of hit these points in the season where there's a lot of miscommunication. I don't think there's gonna be as much as we saw in the Philly series, but I do think like one or two are gonna slip in there. But I don't think it's gonna be as debilitating as it maybe was in the last series.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna say nay as well. I don't think that the Brewers um, right now are a team that is built to be defensive studs. Now I think they make do with what they got. But what sucks is the one that's making a lot of these errors is supposed to be probably your second best defender on your team, and that's Orlando Arcia. Today he had 2 errors on 1 play. I that's impressive to me. I don't necessarily know how that all works out, but then again, he goes and saves himself by throwing an absolute dart across the field. So it's kind of like the Dumb and Dumber. You do something like that, and then you totally redeem yourself.
He
And
kind of
I go ahead.
he kind of reminds me of the guy that like will make mistake on the simplest stuff just because it's just too simple and there's not enough movement, but like on all the
Right.
hard stuff he's like he kind of reminds me of that guy that's just like, nah, the simple stuff, yeah, I can't do, but the hard stuff, yeah, I'm here for.
Yeah, I got to make the highlight play, right? So yeah, no, I'm with you there, and I wouldn't be shocked if RC has another one this series. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he were to go right the ship by making a phenomenal play as well. So he's just that kind of guy. Yeah, it seems like he gets bored at times or can't focus on a certain situation or something like that. I don't know. He sometimes drives me nuts. Anyway, final one. Yay or nay, Jimmy Nelson, James Nelson will make a start by the end of May.
I'm gonna go nay as well as this one on this one. I don't know. There's just something where I think there's a shot it could happen, but I think they're gonna wait really until June. I think at this point there's really no reason to rush him back. Like our pitching has been so good, there's no reason to rush him back. I think we need to do it right to the point where maybe we're a little bit overcautious just to make sure he's coming back and he feels comfortable and there's not going to be a chance of him having to go on the IL again. So I think right now we're in no position where we really need him. So I think why not just kind of let him really get comfortable.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of news that's very, it's always pretty vague with him. This seems to be the most solidified news. Um, I know this is his. Adam McCalvey talked about his start last Friday. It was um, his third one that he's made, and he's with AAA San Antonio right now. Um, he pitched well. It's hard to. He goes 5 1/3 and 3 runs. I think that the problem for him right now is giving up home runs. So I know it's something that when you're down in the minors you're working on stuff too. So it's hard to judge what exactly is this indicative of what he would be up in the show or um, what would it be? But yeah, I'm gonna go nay as well. I think we will see him more around the. I think we'll see him around the All Star break. I hope to see him around the All Star break. I'm itching to see him pitch again. Like I miss seeing Jimmy Nelson throwing, but you also want to do it at the right time, like you were saying. Um, Transitioning to the more weekend. So we're just gonna be talking Atlanta this upcoming series. Um, well, let's talk our weekend review first. So the highlight player. Who do you have for as your highlight for this past week?
I have pretty much the whole pitching staff as a whole. We touched on it before, so I won't get too much into it. But one player who has been a stabilizer for that is Alex Claudio, being able to literally go out every night. So just kudos to the whole pitching staff. They've done really well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to single out one guy necessarily. I am going to, as far as I'm making a point to say this is offensive. Yasmani Grandal is has been an absolute highlight for the Brewers. He's hit a couple home runs over his last 7, hitting close to 300 and driving in 10 runs. He's a guy that's been coming up with the timely hits where he's been able to drive in a run or put one over the wall to drive himself into. Like today, he had the 3-run home run where he hit one that I think crossed at his ankles. I'm not sure how he got under that thing to get it out, but he did it. So I've been loving seeing him bounce back. He got that average up around up over 260 with a 358 on base percentage too. He's been a potent force for the Brewers over the last few games. And then obviously we already talked about him, but Ryan Braun, um, you're seeing vintage Ryan Braun right now, and that's always that's always a real treat seeing that. And you I don't know, it's something that I'm soaking it in now because I don't know, you don't know how much longer of it you're going to get, whether it's, whether it's a little bit more of it this year or for 2 more years, but or for a year or for the rest of this year and next year, you never know. But it's great to see the Ryan Braun that I grew up watching hitting again, basically. Who's your disappointment this week? It's hard to find one.
It really is. I mean, it's really not disappointing because everybody else is hitting behind him. But Ben Gamel, it just kind of a rough series for him. I'm not getting on him too hard, but I had to choose one, and he was the only guy that kind of stuck out that wasn't hitting as he normally would. So Ben Gamel, not much to it, just bad series.
Right. And yeah, even so, he still was getting on base a little bit too. So it's hard. Like there's not really anybody that you're like, oh man, this guy blew. Um, One guy, the only guy that I was a little frustrated with was Jeremy Jeffress. Um, I don't know. He gave up a pretty big shot on Monday when they lost. That kind of flipped the tide of the game. But when it comes down to it, he's been good for the Brewers this year, so I can't really complain. It's just frustrating watching that one outing. So I don't know. It's cool that there's not really anyone that's disappointing to watch because there were, it's pretty easy to find multiple before. So hopefully this keeps up. Let's get into the week going forward. Who needs a breakout or rebound?
Going off of more of a rebound off of the last time is Freddie Peralta. Um, I believe the last time he pitched was when they did that cool split thing between Hauser and Freddie Peralta, which I am so here for, and will fully back up them doing that again because that was gorgeous and something that I've always read about and I've hoped they've done. So
Mhm.
10 out of 10 would recommend again, but I think he just needs to keep going on the radios. I think keeping him consistent. I think he is supposed to pitch at some point this weekend. Um, that's what Count said at least. So just keeping him consistent and him being able to go from each appearance and just build off of each appearance.
Yeah, it's that opener method that the Rays employed starting last year. Um, that's a it's definitely a nice little trend that's hitting baseball. I know Oakland does it as well too, and you just hope to perfect it anytime you try it out. So yeah, I would be looking forward to seeing that as well if they decide to do the same thing. My guy that's gonna bust out is Keston Hira. He gets a couple hits in his debut and has an offer today, but he put one to the wall where he put Bryce Harper basically up against the right field wall today. I thought that thing was going to get out, but sadly it didn't. But I think it's something that I think we're going to see him start to take over that second base spot and make it hard for them to make a decision there, which is going to be fun to watch. Who needs to chill out on Atlanta?
I'm going Freddie Freeman. His last 7 games, he's slugging 500. He has an on base percentage of 370. I mean, like, he scares me. He always has. I don't know why, but just I don't know. He scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely for definitely right to be scared by him because he's a feared hitter throughout the league. I don't think you're the only one that has those feelings. He's uh, luckily for him, he doesn't have to hit in what he called that dimly lit little league field that is Miller Park. So great for him. Once he said that, I jumped off the Freddie Freeman train, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Strike him out every time. Let's go. Anyway, um, I'm gonna go. As I always do, go a little off the beaten path. I got two. First one's Luke Jackson. That's They're a closer. That's one thing that they've had a problem with in Atlanta is finding a stable bullpen. And now that Sean Newcomb came back up, he's relieving games now instead of starting for him. And it seems like it's helping them out where he's able to hold guys or hold an innings the for Luke Jackson to go clean up for him. So it'll be interesting because you're seeing a new bullpen basically, and Luke Jackson hasn't given up runs in his last 5 innings, and he's been able to secure 3 saves. So not a huge sample size, but it would be nice to either A, not see him, or B, be able to touch him up a little bit. The other guy that I have is Charlie Culberson. Now on the year, he's already having a good year. Granted, he doesn't have a ton of at bats, but he's a guy that comes in and pinch hits for them, or um, has a late late switch in for him. So in 31 at bats, Charlie Culberson's batting 452 with, weirdly enough, an on base percentage that is less than his average at
Ugh.
438. Yeah. So that would mean he hasn't walked yet this year, so that would mean that he's gotten on an error. So in his 31 at bats, he has 3 home runs and 10 RBI, and not that he's a huge threat for them, but in his last 7 games, the guy's hitting 714, and again, it's less at bats than a lot of other guys. However, that's 7 at bats over 3 games. He's a guy that you need to watch out for a little bit right now. Um, Not a major guy that you have to game plan for, but there's just certain dudes that you don't want to run into while they're hot, and that's what you got with Culberson right now. Um, let's take a look at who needs to stay consistent.
I put the first base position just in general going with Aguilar and Thames. They've both been doing their job. They've both been um, just getting hits and finding ways to get on base. So just both of them to stay consistent. So it's nice either way, the way Counts puts the lineup together for the day.
Right. It's been a really, after that Cubs game, I would really like to see no more of Thames in the outfield. So if he's going to get any time, it's got to be at first base. Um,
Agreed.
oh my gosh, that hurt. That was painful to watch him try to run down that ball. Um, I'd say the guys that I got 3 for this one actually. 2 Brewers. I got Ryan Braun, obvious reasons. If he could keep hitting over 400 for the rest of his career, great. Another one is Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns has gone back into his role as a reliever for the Brewers, and he's been lights out. No runs given up in his last 7, and he's been a guy that you can ride if you need to, and he's a guy that you can bring in to go get a tough out in a tough situation. So I love seeing Corbin Burns out of the pen right now. And the other one is from the Braves actually, and that would be Folty. Mike Foltynewicz. He has been awful, just absolutely terrible since coming back off the IL, and it was a while for him to get back into the year this year. I think he had a setback at one point where they said that he needed a few more rehab starts. And with Sean Newcomb not delivering for him, and you're seeing a lot of other starting pitching. A lot of their ERAs are up in the mid 4s. Tuki Toussaint hasn't been the guy that they were looking for um, by bringing him up this year. It almost seems like they rushed Foltynewicz back a little bit. Now, I hate to prey off of a guy's injury. However, I also want the Brewers to win games. So I hope Foltynewicz recovers and is fine after this series. So he's giving up a ton of runs. He's getting hit hard. He's getting pulled from games early, and that really bodes well for the Brewers. So we'll see what happens when they face him. And I believe he's pitching in the 3rd game. The next thing we'll look at is who will break out for the Brewers this week. We have it labeled as surprise breakout, but let's just dump this in. Another breakout for the Brewers.
Um, I put down Yalish Chassin. I mean, not that he hasn't been bad by any means. I just think he hasn't quite settled in yet, and this happened to him last year. It's kind of what happens with pitchers like him, where it takes him a little bit to get settled. But I think sooner than later he'll get settled in, and he'll be the Chassin I think we saw last year.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I mean, like he's been pitching pretty well over his last couple starts, which is nice to see. Um, I'm gonna go with Chase Anderson. The guy was pitching like we talked about, pitching really well before he got hurt. Um, I would think that he would continue that. He may not go. I don't know if he'll go have like a limit on him where they're going to try to make it a little bullpen game a little earlier. Regardless, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to contribute and continue to lock it down. All right, let's wrap this thing up with some bold predictions. What do you got?
I got Keston Hero will start to rake with base hits. Um, he's always kind of struggled moving up to the next level for like a couple days. It always kind of
Mm-hmm.
takes him a little bit to figure out the pitching, but I think sooner than later, if he continues to stay up here, I think he's just gonna have a great time and get a lot of hits, maybe a little bit of home runs in there. I don't really care if he does or not, but the main thing for him is if he just continues to hit, have good at bats, and get on base overall.
Just hit the ball, all right. I'm gonna go. Christian Yelich comes out of the weekend with 21 home runs. People say he can't hit home runs on the road, and today he said, "Nay, I can hit two." In fact, so that would
Yeah, I don't know.
require him to hit. That would require him to be hitting three over the weekend, and I think he can do just that. So
Yeah, I don't
go
know
ahead.
if you heard, but Braun was talking after the game, and that his biggest contribution to the game today was giving Christian Yelich, as he calls it, the big brother talk, and telling him to hit as good as he does at home on the road. So it worked.
Hey, go do what you do well and do it here too. Oh,
Exactly.
I didn't even think about doing that. All right, I will. All right. So, any questions, comments, concerns, gripes?
No.
Sweet. All right. Let's wrap this bad boy up. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you again next week.